So I've been balls deep into politics recently, and by balls deep I mean I followed some Twitter accounts. Seeing the online furor over Michelle Wolf's turn at the White House Correspondents' Dinner kind of switched something on in my brain where I'm like, okay, I usually hear these offended voices come up from the abyss every few weeks or so. Maybe it's time I finally shined my own personal flashlight on them, integrate them into my daily routine, and maybe I'll understand them better as a result over time. Previously, I mostly just followed comedians and other entertainers on Twitter because I appreciated their work. If they had political opinions, it was irrelevant to my consumption, though if they were comedians and Hollywood types, they were essentially guaranteed to be 90% left-wing anyway, if anything. So I branched out. I am now following the important parts of the current White House administration. I followed some people that were known conservative voices, some NRA affiliates. I followed a couple extreme alt-right guys for shits and giggles, then quickly unfollowed them after seeing 3 very uncomfortably shameless posts. And on the opposite side, I followed some Democratic politicians, some Daily Show derivatives, and some comedians I'd previously unfollowed for being too political. One thing I can tell you for sure is that the right tweets way more than the left, so my political consumption will balance out in no time. But back to the Correspondents' Dinner and why I feel compelled to talk about this. In the aftermath, all the conservatives were going on their radio shows talking about what offended them when obviously liberal comedian Michelle Wolf was invited by a Republican-controlled White House to speak for 20 minutes in an event that is always a dressing down of the current administration and both sides of the political spectrum. One side more than the other? Sure, but I just watched that shit again before typing this sentence and it was a strong 70-30 ratio. The people in power are the Republicans. The president is a Republican. That's who you make the jokes about. If you ask me, her best joke was about Hillary Clinton. It is kind of crazy that the Trump campaign was in contact with Russia when the Hillary campaign wasn't even in contact with Michigan. You can watch Michelle Wolf's stand-up special on HBO, by the way. Her voice does take some adjusting to, which she acknowledges. It's like when your neighbor starts mowing their lawn, but after a while you can just tune it out. I do think it's pretty good, though. But the offended conservatives took special issue with 2 jokes. One was an abortion joke, which explains itself. The right hates jokes about abortion because they believe abortion is murder unless it covers up an affair. Michelle Wolf said as much afterwards. But the other joke was more subtle. She made a joke about Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders' smoky eye. But it wasn't actually a joke about her smoky eye, it was a joke about her being a liar, using the smoky eye as the punchline, which non-comedians will say is the same thing, because they aren't comedians, so they don't understand the craft as well, so they interpret it wrong sometimes, because that's what happens when you're ignorant. And real quick to address the myth that people who are uneducated in comedy understand comedy just as well as comedians, no you don't. In the same way you don't understand the law as much as a fucking lawyer, and beyond that, lawmakers. Anyway, a bunch of red dudes complained about how it was unacceptable to take a shot at a woman's appearance, even though A, it was another woman making the joke, and B, since when is that a sacred cow? Making jokes about women's appearances is the only reason why the E! Network exists, and half of BuzzFeed is just celebrities that have really let themselves go. Donald Trump himself's feud with Rosie O'Donnell didn't rattle any of these guys' cages when he called her fat and disgusting repeatedly on multiple televised segments, and that wasn't even a joke. Not that I disagree with him, I'm just saying. But these conservative men feel like they need to come to the defense of these poor, humiliated women. They treat them like ponies, or in Sarah Huckabee Sanders' case, donkeys. Just like, how dare you speak ill of this precious creature? Look at it chewing a bale of hay and not even bending or kneeling down to shit. Shame on you for your harsh words. Like a bunch of self-appointed white knights of the old Republican. That's a triple-layer joke right there, tasty. And again, the right controls the White House. You could have gotten a conservative comedian to host the Correspondents' Dinner. If any of them were good or existed, you could have had Dennis Miller host, but based on how slow he was at writing jokes about Michelle Wolf, you'd have had to let him know about 6 months in advance. You could have had Owen Benjamin host, but that would have just gotten him banned from another platform. I don't even know who that leaves, because successful conservative comedians don't share their political views, so you're stuck. There were think pieces trending afterwards of like why the Correspondents' Dinner even exists. Imagine being a small part of a long ceremony and doing something brief that makes people think the whole thing that's been around since 1920 should be canceled. It's an affair that lasts longer than what's televised. Nobody rallied to cancel the 3-hour Oscars when they announced the wrong fucking Best Picture at the end, and I found that more offensive than a joke about abortion. Michelle Wolf ended her speech by saying Flint still doesn't have clean water. Which is true. It's been almost 3 years, and again, many people were quick to point out that the crisis started in 2015 under the Obama administration, which is also true. But the decision to switch Flint's water supplies from Lake Huron to the apparently notoriously filthy Flint River was a decision of the state that happened in 2011, so really the highest level of authority that can be held responsible is the governor of the state of Michigan, and would have nothing to do with whoever occupied the White House at the time. It also means it's actually been about 7 years since Flint has had a non-garbage water supply, and if you're going to hold the previous White House administration responsible for that, don't you also have to hold the current one responsible for still not doing shit about it for the last year and a half? If you think someone should have stepped in before, I think someone should step in now, rather than playing blame games while people continue to get sick, but that is evidently just me. All of this is why I don't understand why Democrats are supposedly the PC party. There is no politically correct party, because both so-called libtards and so-called conservatives are offended by different things in equal measure. Several things per group, in fact. Let's assess them one at a time. And before we start, know that I know there are obviously exceptions, since you can't generalize a group of people with 100% accuracy in any context, but if you drew a Venn diagram putting red and blue on opposite sides, the bulk of it would shake out like this. Let's start with language. Language is something that offends the left. Pejoratives, insults, slurs, bullying, shaming, these are all things that get liberals up in arms. That's why they rallied around Keaton Jones when he was being bullied, until they found out he and his family love calling black people the N-word, then they dropped him like an NRA sponsor. As an aside real quick, David Hogg must be what conservative Christian radio and talk show hosts think of when they imagine the Antichrist. If South Park was on the air right now, they would have him as a recurring theme of the season, just going around draining the sponsorships of any personality that tries to shit on him. He'd be the most feared entity to sponsored Republicans the world has ever seen, and would strike abject terror in the hearts of anyone he crossed paths with. They'd portray him as just this dark, evil, dead-eyed, spectral entity walking up to TV stations and sucking all the money out of them until the once shiny and glistening foundation just looked like a rundown abandoned building with people still in it looking out the window like, what the fuck just happened? Because David Hogg might be the first person you actually can't touch. I'm a mild advocate for gun control myself, and I'm still worried YouTube will shut my channel down just over this shit. Anyone who tries to bully him that gets noticed in the process becomes a marketing pariah and loses 70% of their income, so nobody better tweet him this fucking link, I swear to God. I can't help but think if his school never got shot up and he was never catapulted into the limelight, he would have been in porn by age 25. His name is David Hogg. He wouldn't even have to change it. And I don't say that because I think he's attractive. I don't know if you've seen porn before, but the guys in it apparently do not need to be attractive. But when I look at David Hogg's face, I can't not see it. Like, whenever he looks down, I immediately picture a girl sucking his dick, and he's just looking down at her like, yeah, you better suck my dick or I'll boycott you. I might be anti-gun, but I'll still shoot a load in your face. Hell, he still has a chance if his movement ultimately fails. By the time he's my age, he'll be that guy in porn that moans louder than the chick, and you're like, can you shut the hell up? I ain't watching for you. He definitely sounds like this, too. He's definitely the guy that moans like it's a statement, like, like, are you enjoying this or are you trying to communicate? Help! I can't stop picturing David Hogg in porn. I need help. Oh, as another aside, this has nothing to do with politics, but my friend showed me like 3 years ago this YouTuber named like Alex Ayano or something like that. He's a singer that does covers, maybe you've seen him, but if you have seen him, I dare you to look at him again after I've said what I'm about to say and tell me it doesn't change your perception of him at all. Alex Ayano has a porn star mouth. Admit it, he does. Every time I see his mouth, it looks like he should be passionately kissing women's nipples. You cannot unsee that, I promise. And I mean French kissing those nipples, like really going at it. I told my friend that and it ruined her life, so I assume it's a spreadable opinion. I believe this started as me talking about language offending the left, and that took us to this joyous place. Language doesn't offend the right so much, other than the religious right, where language can get you sent straight to hell. I use God's name in vain, they want me to burn for eternity. I mean, Jesus Christ, lighten up a little. They usually hate swear words, even though that's nowhere in the Bible. Thou shalt not call thine brother an asshole. Alright, sorry to offend God. God is very easily offended. That's probably where they got it from. Abortion offends the right. Doesn't offend the left, obviously. Tragedies offend both sides, but specific ones can be unique to only one. For example, 9/11 is especially offensive to the right because Republicans are very concerned with patriotism and being booyah Americans, so an attack on America is devastating to them, and subsequent jokes about it are therefore taken quite personally. Conversely, the Holocaust is of special offense to the left because that was a matter of racism and bigotry, which is something the left wraps itself up with far more than the right does. A faction of the right doesn't even acknowledge that it happened, and they've even gotten so bold as to run unopposed for Senate seats or whatever it was. The left is very sensitive about race-related issues, like unarmed black shootings, mistreatment, and bias, while the right is very interested in defending white people and wondering what shady activities a black guy could have been doing in his grandma's backyard. And don't get me wrong, white people deserve a defense every now and then, but when two police officers are both unloading all of their rounds into a dude, I'm not sure the heat of the moment is a viable excuse. I'll be honest though, if I'm walking down the street at night and I see a black guy, I tense up. I also tense up if I'm walking down the street at night and I see literally anyone. I am an equal opportunity nervous wreck, and I don't remember if I've used that joke already, but it's why I shouldn't be a cop. The point is, people get offended on both sides by different things, and it manifests differently too, the way they talk about PC culture. For the most part, liberals want real life to be PC, but comedy not to be, whereas conservatives want comedy to be PC and real life not to be. If they didn't want comedy to be PC, they wouldn't get outraged by abortion and smoky eye jokes, for fuck's sake. They wouldn't start boycott hashtags on Trevor Noah and Stephen Colbert because of tweeted jokes they found offensive. But when it comes to real life, what they really hate is terms. The right hates all these new terms, person of color, cisgender. They don't care about pronouns. They hate being called homophobic and transphobic, even though it's apt sometimes when they're terrified to even share a bathroom with these people. Meanwhile, the left does want PC culture in real life. They want everyone to never ever dead name trans people, never say the R word or fat shame people by giving healthy advice. They think calling out an Instagram filter is cyberbullying, and when a 9-year-old commits suicide because someone called him ugly, it's a heartbreaking tragedy instead of natural selection. But large swaths of the left think there are lines in comedy that should never be crossed. They're also guilty of boycotts, trying to get TV shows shut down. They try and rake Ricky Gervais over the coals for his latest stand-up special, which is phenomenal, by the way. And it's true that most comedians are liberals, but being a comedian overrides your sensitivity. You still make jokes about issues you care about, and you have to believe in unequivocal free speech because it's your job description. You can draw a line for yourself not to cross, but you can't believe in an institutionalized line for everyone without devaluing your own medium. So it's in a comedian's best interest, whatever party he's in, to dissuade people from being offended by things so he has more freedom to make them laugh. That's the main thing we should take away from this, I think. You can only draw your own line, and don't put it so close to yourself or you won't have any room to move around. Real quick before we go, I want to talk about people who voluntarily wear Make America Great Again hats everywhere and then whine about the dirty looks they get from people and act like they now know what it's like to be an oppressed minority. Do you get beaten to death on the regular? Do you get the police called on you when you walk into a Waffle House or thrown out of a Starbucks? I don't think you know shit, because some of you are the ones doing that shit. You think anyone leaves a gay man broken and bloodied in an alleyway because he mistakenly hit on them at a bar and then goes home and tweets from their Bernie Sanders fan account? Oppressed minorities aren't picking the oppressed minority in the character customization screen. They're born that way. You choose to wear the hat, despite what you know it represents to a lot of people who live in fear of falling victim to some of the types of people who wear it. When they see you on the street, they don't know if you're just a garden variety Trump supporter or an alt-right drive a pickup truck around and look for stragglers freak. Their guard is going to come up, just like yours does when you see a black guy on the street at night and you're like, is he a businessman or a thug? Is he gonna rob me or leave me alone? You might as well be wearing a swastika hat, because even though you might not be personally responsible for anything bad associated with the symbol, other people are responsible for invoking it in the name of hate crimes and whatnot, and you are gonna catch some of that flack by association, as nobody can be sure which side of that spectrum you're on. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I wrote this entire thing in one very long, late into the night sitting, and I am tired. Won't be when I'm reading this, but I am attacking you from 2 different timelines right now, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.